I'm only just back from Mobile World Congress and I did manage to pick up one of these, but no, not at the launch event. They weren't giving them out like some people think. This one here came from Amazon. They've been shipping out since yesterday and most people should get hold of these in Spain today, which is the 28th of February. So in this video, I'm going to cover the phone in detail like I do with my other ones. Time codes are right up here, so do skip ahead to whatever interests you the most. We know the specs of this phone. Well, most of you probably will if you're watching this. Snapdragon 855, so it is Qualcomm's new 7nm chip. It's more efficient, a lot more powerful. Now, my model of the Mi 9 here is the black version. It has 6GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. So let's start out with having a look at what we get inside the box. The packaging of the box has this really nice shimmer to it. They've gone with this silver, and it actually looks quite good, but it makes it a little hard to capture on camera. So in the top case here, we'll find a TPU case. Here's our SIM tray tool, 3.5mm to Type-C adapter. Yes, of course, it does not have 3.5mm support. They're not going to ever have this, I think, in the Mi series of phones. They're flagships. Here is our case. Now, it's a TPU style one, and it's in a smoky grey color, as you can see there. For a basic included case, it is fine, but I would probably upgrade to something else later on. It covers the buttons, and I will show you in this video what it looks like with the case on it. You also get a warranty card, and then a user guide. The included charger is your QC3 spec, so it does support Qualcomm's Quick Charge 4, but you only get the 18-watt charger here. And finally, a standard Type-C to USB cable. It ships with a transit screen protector that's listing out our key features here. Note that it does have 20-watt wireless charging, which is a first. The phone weighs a light 173 grams, 8.2mm thick, and with the camera bulge, that then brings that up to about 9.5mm. My version is the piano black one, and the finish is very good of this phone. Really nice, super reflective, and extremely slippery too. So you want to have a case on this phone, especially in winter when you've got cold hands. It's just so easy to drop this. Now the edges, the finish around here, feels really good in hand. There's no sharp corners to it whatsoever. It's typical Xiaomi build quality. And it feels very similar to the likes of the Mi Mix 3 or the Mi 8. So for buttons on the right side, we have a metal power button, metal volume up and down. They don't rattle around and they do have a good feel to them. They're easy to access, well at least the power button is. The volume button's not quite so. So for cameras, the top one, that's our telephoto 2x. That's a 12 megapixel sensor. Below that is the Sony IMX586. This has an aperture of f1.8, and it does also support the quad Bayer technology. So it basically downsamples 48 megapixels to 12. It is lacking optical image stabilization. The sensor below it, this is new. This is now an ultra-wide 16 megapixel sensor, and you can probably just make out right here we do have IR transmitters. So this is used, they're calling it and marketing it as laser assisted autofocus, but it's really just IR assisted focus. Then just below that protruding camera module is our dual tone LED flash. Like other Xiaomi phones, the A2 for example, the camera bulge definitely bulges. Sticks out a lot, and it's to me the ugliest part of the phone. Top left you'll find the dual nano SIM tray, so it does have a rubber gasket around it. It is made out of an alloy, so it feels strong. Now why it's got the gasket, that's to give a little bit of splash resistance, keep dust and dirt out, but it does not officially have an IP rating. And below it we now have a dedicated Google Assistant button. Along the bottom you'll find a single loudspeaker here, microphone. It looks like it's dual loudspeakers, but no, there is no dual loudspeaker setup on this at all. Not even the top earpiece doubles as a loudspeaker. 2 antenna lines. Now our Type-C port down the bottom, this sadly does not double as video out, so there's no video output on this. I did test it with some HDMI to Type-C adapters and hubs, but I got nothing from it. Charge times are very fast, so using the supplied cable and charger, you're looking at about 1 hour and 25 minutes to fully charge it, which is very quick. Up the top you'll find one antenna line, IR transmitter and secondary mic for noise cancellation, and it is used in video as well. So the top bezel is a reasonable size. The earpiece looks like it's very long, but it's actually quite short and it's just off center. We have an ambient light sensor and the proximity sensor within this. And we've got a water drop style notch here with a 20 megapixel camera. It's from OmniVision. It has an f2.0 aperture. Now, I have noticed that having this in my pocket, because the earpiece is recessed, that this does not take long at all to full of dust. The side bezels, as you can see, they're slim. They're not the slimmest. They're not at Samsung Galaxy S10 level, but they're not bad at all considering the price of the phone. Now, I'm not seeing any defects, unlike the Honor V20 or other phones that I've looked at, even the Redmi Note 7. You were getting the shadowing around the notch. That's not happening here. It's very good. And that's thanks to, of course, the Super AMOLED panel, which is definitely helping. The bottom bezel does look really good. It's very small here. Now we do have those overly rounded corners, which I'm not entirely fond of, but they don't tend to block UI elements, which is good. Now our status light is just very small at the top, only in white. So sadly no multicolored LED here. So these slim bezels and the water drop notch give it a more modern look, especially when you compare it to the likes of LG's G8. The phone runs Android 9. And the skin on it is Xiaomi's own, of course, which is MIUI 10.2, the global ROM, so we've got plenty of languages there to choose from. And here's what the phone looks like in the case. So the case does protect the screen, only just, it's about 1 millimeter it raises up over the screen surface, but what isn't protected is, of course, the camera. If you have a look side on, the camera still protrudes a little bit, so you do risk getting that lens scratched. So we have a very nice panel on this, 6.39 inches with a resolution of 2340 by 1080. It has a maximum brightness of just over 800 lux. It's very bright. Sunlight legibility is also excellent. Touch response, the digitizer running at 60 Hz. I have no complaints whatsoever. And just look at how deep the blacks do look. Good color reproduction, of course, once you have the display set on the standard mode. Otherwise, it does look a little bit oversaturated. So just like other Xiaomi phones, you can tweak the white balance to your own personal preference. It looks more correct on standard, which I prefer. So our fingerprint reader with an AMOLED screen and then this logo always appearing around about the same position. Now the pixels do move. I always worry about screen burn. So long term, I do believe it'll probably burn in, but it does switch off. You tap the phone to wake it. It tells you where to place your thumb. Now you have to put it on there really quite accurately, otherwise it might not work. And that wasn't that accurate, but the unlocking speed I found to be very fast, but I wouldn't say it works 10 out of 10 times. It's more like 9 or 8 times out of 10 in my full day with the phone now. So it's not quite as good and as fast, I feel, as the rear fingerprint readers on the old phones. So the ROM, because I'm on the global version now, you don't get all of that Chinese bloatware. There's none of that. You get quite a bit of Google bloat, so that to me is still considered as bloat. Tools, not really. There's just a few things in there that are a little bit annoying, but overall it's a lot lighter than if you got one of the Chinese ROMs. Now we do have ambient display, which is Xiaomi's on-screen display. So when you turn it off, then you'll see the time will show up. Now it doesn't show notifications. So this is a complaint I had with previous models. They really need to put a little bit more attention into this. Just like Samsung, they could end up showing us a lot more of their information. You could see missed calls, emails, text messages, and all that, for example. You can schedule it. I normally just leave it on. It does come at the cost at a little bit of a battery life. Another commonly asked question was dark mode. Yes, there is dark mode. Being an AMOLED panel, this is good to save battery life as well using that. Now let's just quickly talk about the ROM performance. It's very good, but do you feel the difference going from Snapdragon 845 to now the 855? Even faster, more powerful GPU. I don't really notice it. It doesn't really feel that much different. It's not a reason to really upgrade to this phone. Now I've noticed that the multitasking and most importantly that full screen gesture lag is gone, but multitasking seems to be smooth, it's fast. I don't have really any problems going through things, changing over to different apps. No issues with that. But what I do have a problem with is we're still not seeing the notifications, like notifications coming through. It's acting like it's the Poco phone with a really long notch, so we're not seeing anything at the top, which is really silly because you can see on my icons that I got WhatsApp messages, but they're not at the top here. And they don't, of course, show with the on-screen display as well. So that's one annoyance that Xiaomi does need to address. They need to fix that. Other than that, the performance of the phone, I mean, it is really quick. It's super smooth. App launch times, again, very good. Task Manager, a little bit aggressive, so it sometimes has to reload apps after a while. And now for a few benchmarks. So Geekbench 4, very good score. When you look at that multi-core score, that's impressive. That's almost 10,000. So it really is a step up if you like your benchmarks. But when you look at the internal storage, hey, this is still a really good speed, but it's not the fastest I have seen. The sequential read, I've seen up to an almost, well over 900 megabytes per second with the likes of the Mate 20 Pro and the Mate 20X. Here's our Antutu score. This is when you look at it and just go, wow, massive difference here. So this is up like 100,000 points. The biggest change is the GPU. Look at that, 156,000. Again, if you love your benchmarks, then really, really quick there. Now, GPS did test it out. No problems whatsoever. It has dual frequency GPS, and your accuracy is always going to hover around about 4, 5 to 3 sometimes meters. So that's fine. It locked on to almost every single satellite. 4G speeds here in Spain, tested it out, no problems. No problems with the reception of the antennas either. And then I did some wireless testing as well. Not quite as fast as I thought it would be. Definitely not the fastest wireless. It's on wireless AC, but I couldn't really get anywhere over. This is between the phone and the router, by the way. This is not affected by the speed of my fiber line. This is just router to router. I've seen way higher than this one, but it's still good. And I did go over the other side of the apartment where the signal was quite low, and still a good result though. You're still going to get decent download speeds. Now there is some good news here when you check the DRM info. So for those of you that like to stream your video over the internet, for example Netflix, you're not going to be stuck in standard definition anymore, because Xiaomi, they're up with the times now. We've got Widevine security level 1, and that is great news. And there is, of course, face unlocking. I'll just quickly demonstrate that now. Very quick. So I lock it, I'll tap it, and it unlocks. It's only about a second. What about the audio quality? So no 3.5mm headphone jack, but the Type-C to 3.5 does sound very good. It's loud enough, it's clean, just pretty much like any other Xiaomi mobile phone. Excellent. I haven't any problems with that. Now, call quality. Have made a couple of voice calls, so the earpiece doesn't sound as good as my Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. It's not bad, it's just it's not quite as good there. Now, there is no secondary loudspeaker up here. The loudspeaker on the bottom, it does have a decent amount of loudness, so no complaints with the loudness of it, depending on the content you're playing. For example, some games are very loud coming through that speaker, but here is a sample of it now. This title here is Shadowgun Legends, and it is running on high settings. And visually, it looks stunning, this one. You get a little tiny bit of... Okay, what about gaming performance? This is all pretty much stating the obvious, isn't it? Adreno 640, it's the most powerful Android GPU really that there is. And it's very smooth. So this is Shadowgun, and normally in the lobby, I like to use this as a graphics test, a very quick one, on ultra high settings, 60 frames per second. It is very, very smooth. Whereas on other mobiles, even with just a couple of years old CPUs, it will just choke now and be stuttering, and you get all of this lag. I'm only recording in 30 frames per second, so you can't quite see how smooth this is, but it is running the best I have ever seen it, really. It's just really smooth, because normally, moving around like this, or fast movements, you would definitely see some frames per second dips, but no, not the case. So PUBG, all those games on the highest possible settings are going to be super smooth. You can't really get any faster than this. As for heat, well, it is getting a little bit warm in this area right here, so that's obviously where the chipset is. And the screen at the front too does warm up after a good gaming session, especially with a demanding game like this at 60 frames per second. So just in the camera mode, very quickly before I show you my samples. So you can, with video, swap between the ultra wide angle, okay? That's the only one. You can't go over to the tele. You can see I'm recording at the moment, but there's no way to swap when recording, which is a little annoying. I like with my Samsung, I can go from the ×2 to the standard wide, but you can't do it with this. I've also noticed that the 60 frames per second 4K is very poor quality. I wouldn't use it. It's a lot of grain. Okay, it's a lot smoother, but it uses the same bit rate as 30 frames per second. I don't know why Xiaomi have done that, so they've still got a little bit more work to do here. And so this is how you swap between them. You can get rid of the ultra wide now, and it gives us the ×2, you can see. So you tap that, that gets us our tele lens. And overall, it's all straightforward. You've got AI, just slightly bolsters the colors, a little bit of sharpening. Night mode is here now, so that is good. This is something that is new, but it's not as good as night mode in other mobile phones. So here are those samples now. I'm going to record some daylight, night, front-facing camera and back, and also photo samples. And front-facing video. So for a flagship in 2019, I do believe they definitely have to implement electronic image stabilization on this. As you can see, it's a little bit shaky. It is enabled, but clearly it's not working. Now it is a 20 megapixel sensor, and I do believe that it could also support 4K on the front, which would be a nice addition, or even 1440p would be good. Same again, that the audio quality, bitrate a little bit low, not the best, and the focus is also fixed, so depending on where you're holding it is whether you're going to be in focus or not. But I think the range, the distance they have chosen here isn't too bad. Now the front-facing camera in low light, as you can see, the quality of course drops right off, but at least it's not dropping any frames. That's the main thing. So this is a video sample, 4K 30 frames per second with the electronic image stabilization enabled, and you can see it does a very good job. So I'm just going to walk down these stairs here just to demonstrate it. Now, just like the ultra-wide camera, you cannot swap between the lenses, unfortunately. You can zoom in digitally, but it will not actually swap over to the other sensor. Audio quality is alright, but the bitrate is not really the best. They could definitely improve on the audio with the mics, I feel, just like really what I complain about almost every single time here. But the stabilization, good that it's working this time around, because on the Mi 8 it didn't really seem to actually work. This is now an ultra-wide sample, so the electronic image stabilization, just walking, it's all handheld. You can see it's doing an excellent job. This is really, really good stabilization. And as long as you pan around slowly, then the video quality remains good. You do see a little bit of a jelly effect, and this lens is not as sharp as the other. Sample now in low light. Focus struggles a little bit more noise, but that's normal. So let's talk about the battery life very briefly. I've been using it and I've got a screen on time that's almost 4 hours and I've lost about 60% battery. Sounds bad, but I have been doing quite a lot of demanding things. This is mostly on wireless. So my estimate, you're going to, I think, get about 7 to 8 hours of continual on-screen time on wireless, which is okay, which is fine, but you'll definitely make it, most people, through a full day, unless you're a gamer. Now, if you're going to be gaming, especially at 60 frames per second, when I was playing Shadowgun, it burns through the battery. So I believe that you can just kill that battery then in probably about 4 hours or 5 hours, which is not the best. So the weakness is a little bit the battery. I think most people it won't be a problem, but why didn't they put a larger battery in this? Now, the build quality is very good. The fingerprint reader, it is good. Okay, you have to touch it right on where it is, where the sensor is, and it works 8 times out of 10. There's been a few times where I've had to redo it again, but this has happened with other phones. So they're still improving on that fingerprint in-screen reader quality. Do it again. But it is very fast. Performance of the phone, blazing fast. It's really, really quick. I haven't seen any full screen gesture lags, which is great, but I do have a little bit of a complaint with the UI. Why are we not getting the notifications at the top there, Xiaomi? Because this is using MIUI. It's set up for their phones that have notches, so like the Mi 8 or the Redmi, and that's why they've got rid of it. You can't see them all at the top because it doesn't have a wide notch. It's only the teardrop. So they need to fix that with software. There's some software tweaks as well I hope they implement when it comes to the cameras. So you can't swap between the lenses when you're recording video, and they could and definitely should improve the audio quality in video. So this got a DxO mark of video #1, probably because of, yeah, it is reasonably good sharpness. You do get a bit of a crop. Stabilization is excellent, but you know, if they're not factoring in the audio, then it's definitely not #1. There's room for improvement there, but overall, it is very good. Front-facing camera, however, does not have any electronic image stabilization. I mean, come on, this is 2019. It's a flagship phone. Why not? Why can they not do that? It's just software. They need to implement that. Now, there's just other tiny little minor complaints with it. So we don't have the dual loudspeaker anymore. The 48 megapixel camera, they've joined the megapixel race again. I would have preferred the 12 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization and the faster dual pixel phase detection autofocus. It would probably perform better in low light as well, because then they could lower and have a much slower shutter rate, capture more light, let more light into the sensor there, but they can't, of course, without the optical image stabilization. So low light photography, it's not as good as, say, Google's Night Sight and all the other night shot modes that you get with other brands, but it's software, so they can probably improve upon that. But overall, this is a really great phone when you factor in that it's the latest chipset, 2019, selling for 449 euros currently here in Spain. Great price, great phone, really do like it. So thank you so much for watching this review, and please do like and subscribe for more up and coming videos. Bye for now.